In this lecture, we're going to be taking a look at how you can actually repurpose the animations that we've been creating so far into your own jump animation. So to begin this lecture, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reopening up our running animation that we've just created in the last lecture. So we have this running animation ready to go. So what we're going to be doing once we have our running animation open is we're going to come over to the second frame here, and we actually don't need this at all. We need every other frame in this animation to create our jump cycle. However, this frame is not needed. So you can come over to the second frame, right click, remove, and there we go. So now we have 3 different frames here that we're going to be working with. So here is our stationary sprite. This is what we've been using for our idle and our run animation, which is just the stagnant stationary character that we can work with. So this will be our starting position for our jump animation. Now the next frame we have is actually going to be our last frame. This is going to be our falling animation, which isn't finished yet. We will be tweaking this slightly throughout this lecture, but this will be our falling sprite. So what you can do is you can come to the second sprite and you can right click and hold. So hold the right click and actually just drag this to the end of the frame cycle. So now that's going to make this the third frame in this animation loop. So now going to our new second frame, which used to be our third frame, we have the actual jumping animation. Again, we need to tweak this slightly, but this will be used or repurposed to be our actual jumping sprite. So if you're coding in some kind of video game, what you can do is you can have a stationary sprite animation that you start on, and this will change into our jumping animation. And then once we start to, gravity starts to kick in and actually make our player fall down, then we start transitioning into our fall sprite, which again, these are not finished yet. So it's a little bit hard to actually see the end result, but that is exactly what we're going to be doing throughout this lecture. So to begin, again, this sprite is perfectly okay. We can stick with the sprite and just kind of claim this as finished. So moving on to the second sprite, this is going to be actually the jumping sprite. So something I do want to change here is I want to just exaggerate these features a little bit more. So I'm going to push the head in. So if I just come over here, I'm going to grab this entire head. I'm actually going to push it down again, another frame. And if we come back to this original state, I'm actually going to press shift, hold down shift and left click to grab this selection here, because I do want the scarf to show as well. So we're actually going to move this whole thing over and actually move it over 1 to the right. So we're moving from the original position. We're going to go down 1 and right 1. And so that's going to move this entire sprite over. And so we're kind of jutting the head forward even more to kind of exaggerate this motion. And now we're going to come over to this hand and we're going to do something similar. So we'll grab the entire hand and we're actually going to move this 3 pixels to the right and 2 pixels up to kind of repurpose where our hand should be. And finally, it's a little bit hard to see, but we're just going to take these 3 pixels on the edge here. These are actually the back arm pixels, and we're going to delete these, and we can remove the outline here as well, just because we want the back arm to be even further pushed behind the sprite. So this is where the kind of this repurposing actually takes place. Now we can just draw a line all the way up from the bottom of our torso and just kind of fill in this space with the belt like so. And we can grab this shadow skin color to bring back the actual torso viewpoint. Now, I do feel like there's just a lot of red and fabric going on here. So I do want to reintroduce back the actual arm sprite. So I'm going to grab the lighter skin color and I'm going to show it as if the arm is actually kind of coming out from the bottom side now. And so we can just draw on a couple of pixels just to show back. Here is our hand sprite. And so we can actually have it come all the way up to the top to actually kind of protrude back out onto the sprite. So something like that will work, where now our hand is actually covering a little bit of our face. We're kind of exaggerating this feature of here's, the hand, and we're kind of just reintroducing back in the forearm of our front arm, and the back arm is completely invisible. Now, next, let's exaggerate this back leg again. So we're just going to grab basically this entire front leg, and we're going to move it one over, so one to the right, to further exaggerate the features of this leg protruding out. Now let's get rid of this pixel here just because our leg is pretty much completely invisible, the back leg. But if we extend this knee here, we can reintroduce back this outline pixel and just cover back these pixels over here. So now our back leg, to finish off the back leg, we can just fill in this shaded pixel here, and there we go. So now we have the back leg and the front leg, but unfortunately, I think there's just a little bit too much showing in this front view. So we can actually get rid of some of the width on the front leg and reintroduce it back in the back leg. I think we needed to push that leg one out to the right. So I'm just grabbing all the pixels and shoving them over one to the right to get some of that width back. Also with the back leg, I think it's just too straight on. So what we can do is we can come over to the middle here, and we can just dot a pixel on the inside and just delete the pixel that is unneeded, that's not being surrounded by any blue. And so now we can kind of reintroduce a curve back into this back leg, because our leg should still be curved. It shouldn't be straight on, because when you jump, you don't really have any kind of stiff straight leg movement. So yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with this. But last thing that we can do with this main jumping sprite is if we come back to this first frame, we'll notice that our entire orientation is moved over to the right. So I can just press M to select this entire image and move him one over to the left so that our position is stationary. Now for this to really be a proper jump, I'm actually going to be breaking a couple rules here. So we're actually going to be extending the canvas just to actually show the motion of moving up and down in a jump cycle, as that is how a jump cycle should be. So what we'll do is I'm going to come up to the top here and select sprite, the top left. We're going to come down to canvas size, not sprite size. We're going to go to canvas size, and now we can actually just grab the top blue line here and extend this canvas up. So maybe I'll make this 32 pixels tall. As you can see here, it shows the actual height of the canvas size. So I just push that up 8 pixels. We're going to click OK, and so it's going to shove everything down. And I can just grab the same sprite and press Control-C, Control-V to copy and then paste this object. And we'll do that one more time. So Control-C to copy the sprite and Control-V to paste. So now we have 3 of the same frame. And we can go to the third frame here, select the entire object, and I'll move them up 2 pixels and do the same thing for the fourth frame. We'll grab this entire object for sprite. And we're actually going to move them up 4 pixels now, because we're going 2 pixels to get to where the third frame is, and another 2 pixels to get to where the fourth frame is. And so if we play this animation, it will be pretty broken, but we can actually see that the character is jumping up into the air. Now the final thing to do is to come to this 5th sprite here, and we can actually grab this whole thing, and we're going to shift him 2 pixels up, so we can create a smooth downward falling animation based on the height of the jump here. But one thing I do want to do here is actually have more of an extended knee crouching effect. So I'm going to grab right from the knee here, and we're going to move all the pixels one to the right so we can exaggerate this kind of curling ball motion. And finally, if we look at the 4th frame and the 1st frame, you'll notice that in the 5th frame, we are shoved over to the left. So I'm going to grab the whole selection and move him 1 pixel to the right, just to kind of keep him a little bit more in line. And now if you play this animation, you'll notice that we have the animation actually moving upwards into the air and back down. But again, the motion of the sprite is completely up to you and how it works for you. So what I'm going to do is on the 2nd frame, I'm going to move him 1 pixel up just so that from the first frame, we still have a little bit of height on the head, and do the same thing. So on the third frame, we're actually going to keep it the same just because with acceleration, we're kind of just slightly moving up. And then on this fourth frame, we can move 2 pixels up instead to kind of peak our jump. We're getting a little bit faster at the top of our jump. And then on the fifth frame, we're coming back down, but I'm actually going to move this 1 pixel down just because, again, we want a lot of motion from this fourth frame here. So if we play this again, we'll notice we have a little bit more of a smooth transition curve from the character kind of reaching his max height and coming back to the floor. So give it a try, play around with this, and see if you can create a jumping animation that, you know, best suits your needs for your project. But that's literally all you need to do to create a simple jumping animation. So just like we've done before, click down to File, Save As, and we want to not overwrite this image. So I'll name this jump.ase, click OK. And again, I'm not going to do it in every single lecture because we've already done it. But if you would like to expand the size and actually export this into a .gif file, feel free. You're more than welcome to do so. We've already done this a few times at this point, but again, I am going to be grabbing the actual head of the character that I want to use as my customization option and just change around the colors, adding the accessories or taking away accessories that are unneeded for our drawing. And yeah, having a finished customizable character using the same jumping animation that we've used as the base with our first fighter character. And there we go. That's my example of repurposing this jumping animation with a new character. So I hope you learned something new about creating a jumping animation and actually working with moving around our object to create more motion. I'm very excited to take on the next lecture where we actually look at how you can create some kind of attacking animation. So until then, I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next lecture.